Many adults want to learn English for work purposes. Maybe you want to learn English because you want a job at a multinational company. Or maybe you want to get better at English so that you can get that promotion at work that you so want. Or maybe you want to improve your English so you can start having job interviews in English. Look, I understand that we all need to make a living, and learning English for work purposes is a valid goal to have. But if the only reason why you're learning English has to do with work, your job, or your career, I'm afraid you might be doing something wrong, and without knowing, you might be hurting your overall English progress and development. So, in today's episode, I want to unpack 3 reasons why I believe learning English just for work is a bad idea, and what you should do instead. Hey there, how's it going? Tiago here, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. In case you're new here, I've created this YouTube channel and podcast to help intermediate and advanced learners of English communicate with more confidence, more accuracy, more clarity, and more awareness. So if this sounds like something you want for yourself and your English, subscribe to the on YouTube or follow the show if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Before we get started with the topic today, I want to announce that I have decided to open my Black Friday deal again for my pronunciation course. As you guys know, I ran this deal last month in November. It was really successful, and many people later, when I closed the deal, when I closed the cart, sent me emails asking me to extend the time a little bit, because they missed the opportunity. So, it's the holiday season. So I decided to open up the Black Friday deal again for the pronunciation course. Now you have until January 1st, 2025 to buy the pronunciation course at a very special low price. Okay? So let me present to you the first reason why I believe learning English just for work is a bad idea. The first reason is because you risk associating learning English with something you're not passionate about. Look, I'm not going to generalize and say that most people hate their jobs. I'm not going to do that. But guys, I wasn't born yesterday. I've been around. I've talked to people. I've read. I've worked in companies. And I can say with certainty that many people don't enjoy their jobs, or they might like it enough to keep it because it pays the bills, but their jobs, their work, is not the thing that truly fulfills them, that truly inspires them, that makes them excited to get out of bed in the morning, okay? And if you're not sure about yourself, here's a question for reflection. Think about this question and answer this question truthfully. Imagine money was not a problem for you. Money was not a problem for you and your family. You had all the money you needed for yourself, for your family, for generations to come. Money is not a problem. Would you still do the type of job or work you do nowadays if money was not an issue? Think about that. Would you work in the same company? Would you have the same boss? Would you maybe change fields, Or would you stay in the same field you are in right now? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that many people would say, yeah, you know what, Tiago? I would change something, that's for sure. Maybe I would change companies, or I wouldn't do this kind of work anymore. I would do this instead, because I was always passionate about this as I was a child, whatever it is. So, I would say that many people, again, not most people, I'm not generalizing, but many people would change. All right, Now, if you are one of the few people in the world that truly love what you do, that really gets excited about it on a regular basis, maybe you can't imagine doing anything else for work. This is what you were supposed to do all along. Kudos to you. Good for you. Appreciate that, because I view this as a privilege. If you have this feeling of passion and excitement about your work, and your work is actually part of who you are, it's not something you do, it's something you are. Kudos to you. Be thankful for that. But I would say that, for many people, that's not the case. So, having said all that, thinking about many people here that don't enjoy their jobs, or that would do something completely different if they had the chance. Why would you want to associate learning English with something that you're not that passionate about, like your job, your work, with something that you view as an obligation? It's something you have to do to pay the bills. It's not something you want to do. Why would you want to associate learning English with that? And it's inevitable. If your only reason for learning English is for work purposes, and you are not that passionate about your work is like, okay, it pays the bills. If you have that kind of attitude, chances are, even subconsciously, you also have the same type of attitude towards your English learning. If you view your job as an obligation, something you have to do, not that you want to do, and you learn English just for that, chances are you're also going to view learning English as an obligation, as something that you have to do, not that you want to do. All right? So what I want to propose here is, instead of having to learn English, you should be wanting to learn English. When you want to learn something, your attitude, how you go about it, is completely different from if you have to learn something for a specific purpose. So think about that. That's the first reason. You risk associating learning English with something you're not passionate about, like work. Then you risk looking at learning English as an obligation instead of something that you really want to do for yourself. That's the first reason. Now, the second reason why I believe learning English just for work is a bad idea is because I believe, guys, that learning English for work is not a compelling reason. It's not compelling enough, at least to me. It's not compelling enough. It's not inspiring enough. I've already shared my story here on the podcast about how I started learning English. I started learning English at 15, and back then, I wanted to become bilingual. I wanted to be bilingual. I wanted to be able to use my native language and the English language very well. I wanted to learn the language of my favorite actors, my favorite musicians. I wanted to understand my favorite rock songs, my favorite bands when they sang. Yes, I knew that, it might lead me to better opportunities work-wise, but that was never at the forefront when I started. When I started, I just wanted to learn the language because I liked it. The media I consumed was always spoken in that language, and I wanted to be bilingual. That was the main drive when I started. Then later, when I got older and when I started working, I realized that knowing English was actually an advantage in many ways, but I only found out about that later. It wasn't my main drive when I started, okay? So, I believe that learning English just for work is not compelling enough. It's not inspiring enough. All right? And it's very extrinsic as well, Usually people who come to me for classes, for example, and who want to improve their English for work, you know, what is the main motivator there? You want a better job. You want a better position in the company. You want more money, more status. These are great things. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I like those things too. But can you see that they are very extrinsic? They are very external. Which brings me to the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Here's an image to better illustrate that. This image illustrates the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Let's look at extrinsic motivation first. You see there, if you are learning something or doing something, and all you have is extrinsic motivation, that means that you are usually driven by outside external incentives, rewards. You are driven by rewards. You want to get something. That's why you're studying that thing. For example, you want to win. You see winning, you want to win in life, or you want perks at work. Perks are benefits, prizes, benefits, promotions, pay raises, bonuses. You see, this looks more extrinsic. Now take a look at intrinsic motivation. And that's actually the type of motivation that I want you to start developing within yourself when it comes to you and your English learning, but also in life. Because intrinsic motivation is much more powerful than extrinsic motivation. Look at some characteristics there of intrinsic motivation. Fun. You do something, you learn about something because it's fun. You like it. It's enjoyable. Self-expression. It's a way for you to express yourself fully to the world, who you are. Passion. It's connected to your passions, your interests, things that really ignite your curiosity, your excitement about the world. Intrinsic motivation also has to do with curiosity. You learn about something, you study something because you're curious about it. You want to find out more about it. Growth, personal growth. You want to grow as a person. You want to be all you can be. You want to live up to your full potential. That's why you're learning English. That's why you're studying this language. You see the difference? Purpose. Enjoyment, which is related to fun again. You see, so intrinsic motivation is something that comes from inside, from you, and is something much deeper. All right? Now, I'm not saying that extrinsic motivation is bad or that it doesn't work. It does work. Extrinsic motivation can be powerful as well, and it can work for a while. For a while. And that brings me to the third reason why I believe learning English just for work is a bad idea. Because if you only learn English for work, your chances of giving up along the way are higher. Because we've already determined here that learning English for work, for better money, better opportunities, better status, positions, whatever, this is all extrinsic motivators. And they can be powerful, they can work for a while, but it's going to be very hard to make your learning sustainable if you only have extrinsic motivators. To make your learning sustainable, you need intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is actually the drive that is behind you not giving up. And I've already touched on this many times here on the podcast. Learning a foreign language, such as English, very well, and getting to a very high level of proficiency and fluency in the language is something that takes time. It's a midterm to long-term process. It takes you a few years at least to get there. So, you gotta make it sustainable. All right? Because if all you have is extrinsic motivators, maybe that initial excitement you have when you started is going to vanish very soon, after a few months, after a year, and then, if you don't have the intrinsic motivators to anchor you, you're going to give up. All right? So you got to make it sustainable. And the way to make it sustainable is by finding methods and habits that you can keep doing for a long time, but also by developing more of this intrinsic motivation, all right? And not relying only on external rewards, prizes, all right? So, just to recap here, the first reason why learning English just for work is bad is because you risk associating learning English with something you're not passionate about, like your job. Many people don't like their jobs. Many people are not inspired by the work they do or the companies they work for. All right, so associating English with that, chances are you're going to view that as an obligation as well. And you're not going to put in all you could put in, because to you, learning English is just an obligation. It's not something you truly want to do for yourself. Reason number 2. I believe learning English just for work is not compelling enough as a reason. It's highly extrinsic, which brings me to reason 3. Your chances of giving up along the way are higher if you only depend on extrinsic motivators. So now that we have defined intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, and we have also determined that developing more of your intrinsic motivation is much better to make our learning sustainable and our studies sustainable, let me give you here some tips to increase your intrinsic motivation. How can you do that? I actually found this really cool article on Forbes magazine. All right? And this article is actually talking about that, giving us some tips on how to improve our intrinsic motivation. But first here, I just want to read a couple of nice paragraphs from the article that I found interesting. Check it out. A 2021 study examining intrinsic motivation over time and how it impacts mental fatigue found that, with high intrinsic motivation, people can maintain their performance over time as they seem willing to invest more effort as time progresses than with low intrinsic motivation. If you're hoping to improve your performance or general outcomes, you're talking about learning English, but it could be in any area of your life. It could be personal or professional, by the way. It may be time to look inward. Inward is inside. Look inward to your intrinsic motivation. Increasing your intrinsic motivation can help you harness skills and improve your performance. And then the article mentions Stefan Falk. He is a performance expert and also the author of a book about intrinsic motivation. Here's what he says. He says that during moments of intrinsic motivation, you perform at your very best. You lose yourself in what you're doing and become one with the task. Really cool, right? So when you are in the intrinsic motivation mode, you perform at your best. And I love this. Becoming one with the task. Have you ever done something? Maybe you are working on a project or something, or even studying, and you just lost track of time? You were so engrossed in the activity, you were so involved that you didn't even see time passing. This is becoming one with the task, and that's how I want you to feel when you sit down to have an English class with your teacher, when you sit down to practice your English with a podcast, a movie clip, or just study some grammar. I want you to be one with the task. The way to get there is by having an intrinsic type of motivation while you're learning the language in the first place. So here are some tips that the article gives us. Number 1, identify the big picture. Understand how your actions fit into the big picture. If you don't feel like you're contributing value, you're more likely to become demotivated, as most people have a psychological need to feel their efforts aren't in vain. So, it's very important for you to reflect on why you're learning English in the first place. What is the big picture of you becoming fluent in English, and how is this activity of learning English and improving your English adding value to your life, to your family, to you as a person? And how is it going to add value to your future? So you got to think about that. Reason number 2, or tip number 2, start with easy tasks. Be action-oriented and strive to perform simple tasks immediately. The idea is to collect easy wins. I also call them small victories or small wins, right? Feel-good hormones are released in our brains when we check items off our to-do lists. This makes us feel accomplished and more motivated. So, as a suggestion here, maybe every morning you can write down a simple list of maybe 3 or 5 items related to English learning that you want to take off on that day. Maybe one of them could be listening to a podcast in English for 15 minutes. The other could be studying about a grammar topic you really struggle with. And the other could be having the class with your teacher if you have private classes or if you go to school. And then, as you do these tasks throughout the day, you just take them off. This is good for our brains. We start feeling good about it because we feel like we are making progress. This reminds me also of that idea of making our bed in the morning. Yeah, I'm sure you have seen that before. The idea that the first thing you should do when you get out of bed in the morning is make your bed. Why? Because it already puts you in action mode for the day, and it's already a small victory, a small accomplishment or win that you have for the day. It's like the first item is already crossed, Okay, my bed is made, it's organized. Now what's next? You see? Tip number 3, according to the article, avoid mindless repetition. Changing how you approach something organically makes it more interesting. The next time you're faced with what you deem as a mindless task, a boring, repetitive task, think about how you can make it more challenging. What can you do to make something feel exciting? For example, can you set a goal to achieve something faster with the same result or better? Learning English, for the most part, should be fun. But I also know that there are certain aspects of English learning that are not so fun. They're kind of boring, and it varies from person to person. Maybe for you, it's writing. You hate writing. Maybe for you, it's grammar. You hate studying grammar. You find it boring. Or maybe for you, it's pronunciation. You don't have the patience to really practice the sounds of English and really get them right. Whatever it is, there is at least one thing about English learning that you don't feel very passionate about, and that's okay. So, with those things, how can you make them more interesting for you, more challenging? Think about that, all right? Tip number 4. Seek helpful opportunities. Practicing compassion benefits you in myriad ways. Myriad is like many ways, okay? Participate in activities that you find rewarding, especially if you're able to help someone or help a cause important to you. This will energize you and boost your confidence, increasing intrinsic motivation organically. One of the things I always talk about is how teaching English has helped me tremendously. It has helped me become a better speaker of English, and also it's helped me like the language even more and like learning about the language even more, because now I'm helping people improve their language skills in English. So if you are already at an intermediate level, find someone who is maybe a beginner or not as advanced as you and help that person teach some things to that person. Be part of a community of like-minded people that are also interested in learning English. You get help from them. They also get help from you. All this is good for increasing your intrinsic motivation. Okay? Tip number 5. It's a big one. Focus on solutions. Negative thoughts, when unmanaged, slow your brain down, increase your stress levels, and make it more challenging to solve problems. Overcome negative thoughts by focusing on solutions instead. Set aside 15 to 30 minutes each day for self-reflection. Self-reflection helps to decompress and better understand what's driving your feelings, allowing you to address those things as opposed to avoiding them, making you more equipped to find solutions and move forward. I've already touched on this topic before, the importance of self-awareness, developing your self-awareness as a learner, and having a moment, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, where you actually sit down and reflect about your overall English development, your English progress, your approach to learning the language. Maybe you have to change something in your approach. Maybe you have to add something, delete something. This self-reflection, this checkpoint, let's say, should be done regularly. Check in with yourself and analyze your progress, your approach to learning. Finally, tip 6 from the article is reframe tedious tasks. Similar to mindless repetition, things you deem tedious may feel like a waste of time, but reframing them from boring to rewarding allows you to tap into your intrinsic motivation. All right? So look for how a task, whether tedious or not, adds value and increases intrinsic motivation. Again, maybe you're not that passionate about writing. Okay, maybe you think writing in English is boring. How can you make it more fun or more rewarding for yourself? Reframing is about changing the way you think about something. Maybe you think about something in a negative way. How can you think about that from a more positive way? All right? One idea here about writing is understanding that, okay, if I want to be a better speaker of English, I need to become a better writer, because by becoming a better writer, I'm going to be better at organizing my ideas and presenting my ideas in a clear way. And that's going to help me become a better speaker. This is one example of trying to frame something boring into something more positive and constructive. All right? So guys, these are some final words that I have for you now. Remember, why you learn English for work is a valid reason. It is not compelling and inspiring enough, and it risks the sustainability of your studies. Instead, you should work on developing your intrinsic motivation for learning English. Intrinsic motivation can be applied to all aspects of your life, and it has proven to be an effective way to improve performance, reach and exceed goals, and boost your overall sense of well-being. So, think about that. Now, Before we wrap up today's episode, it's time for the Learner's Corner, and I have here a very nice audio message from Christian Parado from Colombia. All right. So, let's listen to Christian from Colombia and see what he says. Hey, Shago, how is it going? I'm Christian from Colombia. I just wanted to say that your videos, I find them really useful, so entertaining. Yeah, you have like all that magic to share your ideas, and this moment, I'm studying English because in the past I was doing it. I was studying as well, but then I tried to make a life as a musician, playing my guitar from time to time. And then all day long, 24/7. I didn't stop, but at this moment, I have to. Yeah, I have to find new opportunities, like a different kind of job with my family, and I want to study something else. Because making a life as a musician, as a professional guitarist, that's really difficult. You can't do that, of course, because it's a good habit. Like something to do in your free time, to be relaxed, to calm down all those bad feelings that you may have, So yeah, I just wanted to say that. Just keep it up and continue like that, and I'll be watching you all the time. Yeah, don't worry. Watching you and listening to you with your podcast. And yeah, I just wanted to say that. Very nice, Christian. Cool, Christian. Well, thank you for following the work, Thank you for following the podcast, the videos here. It means a lot, and I'm glad the content has been helping you, and you speak English very well already. I'm going to, again, go out on a limb here and say that musicians usually have an easier time, I believe, picking up languages because I'm also a musician, as you probably know. And I feel like it's kind of easy for me to pick up sounds. So, not only for music learning, but also for language learning, right? So, I think it's amazing because many very good speakers of English as a second language I've met, they had something about music in them. They were into music. They played something. They sang. They had something related to music. So, maybe there is something there about that. I might be completely biased here, but it's what I observe. No wonder many English teachers are also musicians. There are many. I think there are so many English teachers who play guitar, who sing, because I think there is something to it. There is something related to music and language learning for sure. I totally relate with what you shared here. For a while when I was younger, I also wanted to make it as a professional musician, but I realized that it wasn't going to be that easy. And then, fortunately, I found English teaching, which became the main thing that I do. And nowadays, I can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, I am a teacher. Yeah, it's not just something I do, but I totally relate to what you shared here. And it's nice to keep music, even if as a hobby, right? Like you said, it keeps me sane, for example, personally. Listening to music, playing music keeps me sane. So, it's important for me to do that, and it should do the same, even if you're not going to pursue a professional music career for now. But Christian, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about you and sending us your audio message. Guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you found it useful. The best way for you to support my work in a free way is by subscribing to the channel here, liking the video, leaving a comment, letting me know what you thought about today's topic, and this idea of not learning English just for work, and also developing more of an intrinsic type of motivation to learn English rather than only extrinsic motivation. So, leave your comments here, letting me know what you thought about it. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcast, you can leave me a 5-star review and follow the show so you don't miss a single new episode. So I'm signing off. I'm Tiago. Thank you so much, and I'll be talking to you very soon in the upcoming episode. Bye-bye.